The war room was silent, except for the hiss of static and the dying scream of a pilot's voice. We lost an entire fleet. To primitives. Kalen Dravik stood motionless, his pale gray eyes fixed on a holoscreen, where a jagged transmission bled across the display. Fragments of the Imperial strike fleet, twisted hulls, broken engines, floated in black space, orbiting a blue-green world of Arcasians had called Sol 3. Earth. Impossible! Muttered High Marshal Zyrex Ven, the tall, sharp-featured commander of the Empire's legions. His crimson ceremonial armor glimmered beneath the cold lights of orbital Citadel Erix. The humans have no fleets, no planetary defenses capable of this. Our reports are clear. They're primitive species, barely out of combustion engines. Kalen's throat tightened. He'd heard this arrogance before, from commanders now long buried under the ashes of worlds they underestimated. He stepped forward. High Marshal, that was no accident. I told the Council this would happen. Zyrex turned his angular head, lipless mouth curling into disdain. Dravik, you retired from command cycles ago. What could you possibly know of these soft-skinned creatures? Kalen let the insult roll off, enough to recognize the look in their eyes. He tapped the holoscreen, magnifying the chaotic battle recordings. Grainy images showed human fighter jets diving between orbital ships, their pilots using reckless maneuvers that defy conventional strategy. They adapt. They're unpredictable. And they don't stop when logic says they should. A murmur ran through the assembled counselors. Few dared to speak against Zyrex, but Kalen's voice carried the weight of campaigns fought on dying suns and broken moons. You all think this will be another easy conquest, Kalen continued. But humanity fights differently. They've been fighting each other for millennia. That kind of violence is carved into their bones. You're romanticizing animals, Zyrex scoffed. We're the Empire. We have broken the Korean war tribes, shattered the Dreth swarms, crushed civilizations far beyond these mud-worlders. Do you suggest that they, a species without warp travel, are our equal? Kalen didn't flinch. No, I'm saying they're worse. The room froze. Kalen remembered the first time he'd read the intercepted transmissions from Earth. Their history was a mosaic of war ingenuity and sheer madness. He'd studied the Terran conflicts, wars where millions died over land, ideology, or pride. He saw the footage of their soldiers, dirty, bloodied, but laughing the face of certain death. He cleared his throat. You underestimate the ferocity of desperation. For them, survival is not an abstract ideal. It's personal. Every war they fought against themselves. Now imagine what happens when they unite against you. The council chamber rippled with low, uneasy whispers. Even the coldest strategist could sense the truth in his voice. High Marshal Zyrex slammed a clawed hand on the table. Enough fear-mongering. These humans have one planet. One. A single industrial base compared to the Empire's 1,000 foundries. We will bring them to their knees before they can even scream. Kalen's tone hardened. That was exactly what Commander Rithen said about the Dreth swarms. Do you remember what happened to his fleet? Zyrex's eyes narrowed, but Kalen pressed on. You've grown complacent. Every victory has made you weaker, softer. You expect every enemy to fight like the last one. Humans won't. I've seen their simulations. They think differently. They'll use their weaknesses against you. A slender counselor with translucent skin leaned forward. What do you propose, Dravik? Kalen looked around the room, his gaze firm. Treat them with caution. Study them. Don't provoke them into uniting. Right now, Earth's nations are divided, but an invasion will forge them together. Once that happens, you'll face a kind of resistance we've never encountered. Zyrex snorted. You sound like you admire them. Kalen's lips curled into something between a smirk and a grimace. I don't admire them. I fear them. After the meeting, Kalen walked the steel corridors of Erix, his mind a storm of unease. Through the windows, the dying star they orbited bathed the Citadel in faint amber light. He could feel the Empire's pride crushing its own wisdom. He paused by a viewing deck, staring at the endless sea of stars. He'd fought countless wars, seen hundreds of species crushed under the Imperial banner. None had made him hesitate. None had made him warn his superiors. But something about humanity gnawed at him. Perhaps it was their refusal to break. A voice cut through his thoughts. You made quite a spectacle in there. Kalen turned to see Admiral Serex, one of the few officers who respected him. Her silver-scaled face was impassive, but her golden eyes glimmered with curiosity. They don't listen, Kalen said quietly. They never do, Serex replied. But you're not wrong. The recon reports are strange. Humans don't follow predictable patterns. They improvise in ways that make no tactical sense. And yet it works. Kalen crossed his arms. Exactly. If the Empire invades, they'll learn the hard way. And by then, it'll be too late. Serex tilted her head. So, what do you plan to do? Kalen's voice dropped to a whisper. Something I swore I'd never do again. I'm going to see this enemy for myself. Later, in the dim light of his quarters, Kalen activated a private terminal. The screen flickered with intercepted human broadcasts. Snippets of news, music, war footage. A recording of a human soldier played. Her face streaked with dirt and blood as she shouted orders to her squad. There was no fear in her voice, only defiance. Kalen exhaled slowly. Gods help us if we push them too far. The next morning, the official declaration came. The Varkassian Empire would launch a demonstration strike against Earth to encourage compliance. Kalen stood in the hall as the announcement echoed through the citadel. Soldiers cheered, their voices full of unshakable confidence. Kalen felt only dread. He turned to Serex. When this goes wrong, remember this moment. Remember that I warned them. She met his gaze, unflinching. I believe you, Dravik, but belief won't save us. Kalen's jaw tightened. Then we'd better start preparing for the war they think they want. As the Imperial fleet prepared to jump toward Sol, Kalen stared at the holographic projection of Earth, a small, fragile-looking planet, blue and green against the void. He'd seen worlds burn, cities crumble, civilizations erased from history. Yet something about this world felt different, not because of what it was, but because of who lived there, the humans. And if the Empire didn't listen, the galaxy would soon know their name. The Imperial scout ship Viral drifted into Earth's upper atmosphere, like a predator gliding through shallow water. Kalen Dravik stood at the observation deck, arms folded, watching the blue planet turn below them. The surface shimmered with oceans, clouds, and sprawling landmasses scarred by faint geometric patterns of cities and roads. Humanity's handiwork, unpolished but relentless. Strange world, murmured Admiral Serex beside him. Her voice carried the tone of someone reading a puzzle they couldn't solve. Its surface is alive with heat signatures. Civilian networks are active 24 cycles a day. They consume and produce at a speed most species can't comprehend. Kalen's jaw tightened. They move fast because they fear stagnation. I've studied their history. They build, destroy, and rebuild with ferocity I've never seen. No empire, no unified government. Yet somehow they thrive. Primitive. A younger officer scoffed from behind them. Their weapons are a century behind ours. Kalen turned sharply. Weapons aren't everything. These people fight with whatever they can hold. You think that makes them weak? The officer fell silent, unwilling to meet his gaze. Kalen spent the next hours studying data feeds. The probe drone swept over Earth's surface, capturing images of sprawling cities, rusted industrial complexes, and barren warfields from decades past. Each frame told a story. Ruins from conflicts that had barely ended before the next began, memorials etched with names of the dead, and soldiers training in vast compounds, their breath misting in cold air. One clip froze him in place, a live transmission of a human training exercise. The camera tracked a squad of soldiers weaving through a crumbling urban structure. Their weapons were primitive rifles by Imperial standards, but their coordination was astonishing. One soldier, a woman with a scar cutting across her cheek, barked orders while vaulting over debris. Her movements were sharp, deliberate, instinctive. Who is she? Kalen asked the technician, monitoring the feed. Major Elena Reyes, the technician replied. Military leader of something called the North Continental Alliance. Our records show she survived 6 separate conflicts and earned every leadership commendation her people give. Kaylin stared at the frozen image of Reyes. Her eyes, dark and steady, radiated a kind of resilience he recognized all too well. "This one understands war," he muttered. "Not the kind fought for glory or empire, but survival." By dusk over the Americas, the first Imperial reconnaissance team was deployed. 3 elite scouts, armed with cloaking fields and silent rifles. Their task was simple: infiltrate, observe, and return. Hours later, Kaylin watched the incoming live feed. What he saw twisted his stomach. The team had landed in a dense forest near a human military base. Thermal images showed Reyes' unit on patrol, unaware of the approaching scouts. Kaylin leaned closer, expecting a swift observation mission. Instead, the screen lit up in chaos. Human soldiers reacted almost instantly. Primitive sensors, simple motion traps, and heat-seeking drones detected the cloaked scouts. Within seconds, the patrol turned the woods into a deadly trap. Explosions roared. Bullets, tiny metal slugs by Imperial standards, shredded foliage with surgical precision. Kaylin clenched his fists as one of the scouts fell, shot through the chest despite advanced armor. Another was cornered, unable to counter the humans' relentless push. The feed cut off with a final scream. The last image showed Reyes standing over the fallen scout, rifle aimed steady, her eyes blazing with suspicion. 3 elite scouts, Sarek said quietly, her voice laced with disbelief. Gone. To soldiers wielding projectile weapons. Kaylin finished, his tone cold. "Do you still call them primitive?" Hours later, Kaylin sat alone, replaying the fragmented footage. Every detail of Reyes' tactics etched itself into his mind. She moved with the efficiency of someone who'd seen too many battles and refused to lose another. He activated a private channel, linking directly to Sarek's. "High Marshal Venn will use this incident as justification to escalate," Kaylin said. "But we need to rethink our approach. They learn too fast. If we keep testing them, we'll give them exactly what they need, knowledge of our weaknesses." Sarek's voice was grave. "Venn won't listen. He's already demanding a show of force. He believes crushing one of their cities will end this before it begins." Kaylin felt the weight of the words settle in his chest. "And when it doesn't?" Sarek's paused. "Then we burn the planet." That's his answer to everything. Kaylin knew he had to understand these humans before the Empire destroyed them, or was destroyed trying. He spent the night immersed in intercepted communications, news broadcasts, military reports, even their chaotic digital chatter. The human world was divided, nations jostling for power, leaders bickering over borders and resources. Yet beneath the discord, Kaylin sensed a common thread. When faced with an external threat, they could unify with terrifying speed. It was a survival instinct the Empire had never faced before. By morning, Kaylin had made a decision. "Get me a secure channel," he told Sarek. "I need to speak with Reyes." Sarek stared at him as though he'd gone mad. "Direct contact? That's treason." "Call it what you want," Kaylin replied. "If someone doesn't warn them, this will spiral into a slaughter. And I'm not talking about theirs." Reluctantly, Sarek arranged the transmission. Within minutes, a grainy holographic image of Major Elena Reyes flickered into view. Her eyes narrowed as she took in Kaylin's alien features. "Who the hell are you?" she demanded, voice steady but edged with suspicion. "I'm not your enemy," Kaylin said calmly. "Not yet. Listen to me carefully. My people think they can conquer your world. They don't understand you, and they will underestimate you. That will end badly for everyone." Reyes leaned closer, her expression hard. "You're one of them. Why warn me?" Kaylin hesitated, then answered with a quiet conviction. "Because I've seen what happens when empires think they're untouchable. I won't watch it happen again." The transmission ended abruptly, but the spark in Reyes' eyes lingered in Kaylin's mind. He turned to Sarek. "She understands the stakes. They'll be ready now." Sarek gave him a sharp look. "You just armed the enemy with knowledge. If Venn finds out..." "He'll call me a traitor," Kaylin said. "So be it. I'd rather face his wrath than watch us walk into a war we can't control." As the Vero prepared to leave orbit and regroup with the Imperial fleet, Kaylin stood at the viewport, watching the blue planet spin beneath them. "They're awake now," he murmured to himself. And gods help us all when they fight back. The Imperial fleet broke through the veil of stars like a spear point, its warships aligning above Earth's orbit with mechanical precision. Dozens of vessels, sleek, black hulls laced with glowing veins of energy, descended into formation. The invasion was no longer a question. It was an inevitability. Kalen Dravik stood on the command deck of the Valis Prime, the High Marshal's flagship, watching the planet below through the panoramic viewport. Blue oceans gleamed beneath drifting white clouds, deceptively peaceful. He felt none of the anticipation the other officers radiated. Instead, there was a hollow unease gnawing at him. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Admiral Serex muttered beside him, voice low enough not to carry. Kalen's gaze never shifted. "I've seen what happens when overconfidence meets reality." Before Serex could respond, High Marshal Xyrix Ven strode in, crimson armor gleaming under the sterile lights. "Begin the demonstration," he commanded. His voice was like iron dragged over stone. "Level one of their cities. Let them see our power." A weapons officer spoke, excitement barely contained. "Target acquired. A coastal metropolis. Designation New York City." Kalen's stomach twisted. "Don't do this," he said sharply. "If you attack civilians, they will never stop fighting. Not ever." Xyrix turned, eyes glowing with cold malice. "I don't need advice from relics who fear primitives. Watch and learn, Dravik." The Valis Prime's primary cannon powered up, its energy core glowing like a newborn star. Kalen's pulse quickened as the targeting reticle locked on Earth's surface. Then, with a soundless flash, a column of searing light tore downward. The blast struck the water just offshore, vaporizing waves and sending a towering plume skyward. Even from orbit, Kalen could see the ripple of panic as the shockwave ripped through the city's outskirts. "Message sent," Xyrix said with a cruel grin. But the response was faster than anyone expected. Alarm shrieked as Earth's defense systems activated. Not a coordinated planetary shield or advanced anti-ship weapons, but a patchwork of missile silos, jet squadrons, and something far more dangerous. Ingenuity. "Unidentified projectiles incoming," shouted a sensor officer. "Missiles?" Xyrix scoffed. "Primitive toys. Disintegrate them." The fleet's automated turrets fired, detonating several warheads mid-flight. But others split into multiple smaller payloads, decoys, chaff, and kinetic slugs, forcing the Empire's defenses to waste firepower. Then came the unexpected strike. A swarm of drones, hastily converted from civilian technology, launched from the city's rooftops and climbed into the sky. They weren't designed for space combat, but they didn't need to be. Packed with explosives and remote-guided by human operators, they tore into the fleet's lower atmosphere craft, detonating like angry hornets. A corvette exploded off the Valis Prime starboard side, its hull fractured by a swarm of drone impacts. The crew fell silent. Kalen's voice was cold and sharp. "I warned you. They don't fight with rules. They use whatever they have." "Silence!" Xyrix snapped, but Kalen saw doubt flicker in the commander's eyes. "High Marshal," shouted another officer. "We're detecting electronic interference, jamming signals from their ground forces. Our targeting arrays are destabilizing." Kalen smiled grimly. "They're using our own arrogance against us. You underestimated how quickly they'd learn." The next wave of resistance struck from orbit. A stolen Imperial drone, hacked and overridden, slammed into one of the fleet's smaller cruisers, disabling its engine. Kalen leaned over the console, studying the telemetry. "They're learning faster than I predicted," he murmured. "This is only the beginning." Serex whispered, "We need to pull back, reassess." But Xyrix roared, "No retreat. I will not be humiliated by animals. Deploy ground units. Crush them before they regroup." Troop carriers launched, piercing the atmosphere in streaks of fire. Kalen watched as squads of Arcasian soldiers, armored, genetically enhanced, stormed into the city streets. They expected fear. Instead, they found chaos. The humans fought like demons. Kalen observed the battlefields with growing unease. Human fighters poured through the streets, using the terrain as a weapon. Snipers fired from shattered skyscrapers. Explosives turned alleys into kill zones. Tanks roared to the avenues, belching smoke and fire. Major Elena Reyes led the resistance from the front. Kalen saw her on one of the live feeds, shouting into a comm device. Flank their armor. Use the railguns on the rooftops. Hit the joints. Within minutes, an entire Imperial platoon was wiped out. Their advanced shields, designed for frontal assaults, were useless against the unpredictable attacks from all angles. Casualties mounting, Sarek said, her tone grim. Pull them out, Kalen demanded. This isn't a war zone, it's a trap. Xyrix's jaw tightened, fury radiating from him. Dravik, if you speak again, I'll have you silenced. Kalen stepped forward, eyes burning. Do it then. Watch your empire bleed itself dry against warriors you don't even understand. The room froze. No one dared breathe as Kalen locked eyes with Xyrix. For a moment, the commander seemed ready to strike him. Then, without another word, he turned away. By nightfall on Earth, the city burned, but it was not the easy victory the Empire had promised. The fleet had lost 3 corvettes, 2 troop carriers, and nearly 1,000 soldiers. Kalen stood alone in the observation deck, staring at the scarred surface of Earth below. The humans had survived the first strike, and they would remember it. Sarek joined him, her face pale under the lights. This isn't a war, Dravik. It's a reckoning. Kalen exhaled, his voice quiet but certain. And it's only the start. If they keep adapting like this, the Empire won't just lose. It will break. The fleet's silence was heavier than any battle noise. It lingered in the aftermath of defeat, in the empty spaces where confident voices had once filled the air. Kalen Dravik stood on the command deck, scanning the casualty reports scrolling across the hollow display. Numbers bled like wounds, lost ships, fallen troops, and disabled systems. High Marshal Xyrix Ven stalked the deck, like a wounded predator, his crimson armor dulled by smoke residue from the last skirmish. Reinforce the ground lines, he snarled. Deploy every remaining battalion. I want the city burned to its foundations. Kalen didn't look up. If you keep feeding them troops, you're giving them more targets to learn from. Xyrix spun on him. Enough. I will not be mocked by you, Dravik. This isn't mockery, Kalen said, voice even but hard. It's truth. Every soldier you send down there teaches them our tactics. By the next engagement, they'll know how to counter our weapons. We're handing them victory one mistake at a time. The room stilled. Even the junior officers froze, their eyes darting between the 2 veterans like they were watching an oncoming storm. Hours later, Kalen stood in the war room, hunched over a map of Earth. He studied troop deployments, noting the weak spots where Imperial forces were being ambushed. The humans were quick, too quick. Admiral Sarek approached, her voice low. There are whispers among the ranks. Some think you're right, that we should retreat. Kalen looked at her, weary but resolute. A tactical retreat would save lives. But Ven's pride will never allow it. Sarek hesitated, then leaned closer. What if we stop waiting for his approval? Kalen's brow furrowed. What are you suggesting? That you do what you've always done, she said. Lead. Quietly. If you can feed the humans enough intelligence, they can cripple our ground forces and force Ven's hand. Kalen considered the thought. It wasn't treason in his mind. It was survival. On Earth, the war zone was shifting. Smoke coiled over the skyline, buildings gutted and blackened. Yet the humans held firm. Major Elena Reyes crouched behind a broken wall, helmet scorched, eyes sharp. Her unit had intercepted Imperial supply drones using makeshift signal jammers. With those supplies, they'd turned abandoned construction equipment into weapons. Improvised railguns, armored barricades, even remote-guided explosive rigs. Status. Reyes barked into her comm. A voice crackled back, tense but steady. We got one of their dropships disabled. We're rigging it with charges. Good. Send them a message they'll remember. Kalen's encrypted transmission reached Reyes that night. The message was brief, but enough. Fleet preparing a massive strike at dawn. Focus on their orbital link towers. Without those, they'll be blind. Reyes didn't question the source. Whoever was helping them from above had earned her trust with accurate intel. She turned to her squad. Tomorrow, we don't just hold the line. We cut their eyes out. Dawn came with fire. Imperial ground forces advanced through the ruins, supported by hovering gunships and towering exoframes. But the humans were ready. Hidden charges detonated in sequence, collapsing buildings onto advancing troops. Snipers fired from shadowed rooftops, forcing the invaders into narrow kill zones. Then the humans struck the orbital towers, massive relay spires the Empire used to coordinate ground assaults. Reyes led the charge herself, blasting through enemy barricades with a stolen plasma rifle. "Plant the charges," she shouted, covering her team as they rigged explosives to the tower's base. Kalen watched from orbit as the first tower collapsed, sending ripples of chaos through the Imperial command network. Signal disruption detected, a technician reported. Ground units are losing contact. Kalen didn't hide his grim satisfaction. "Told you they'd find a way." High Marshal Ven's fury erupted like a storm. He slammed his clawed fist against the command console. "Dravik, this is your doing." Kalen met his glare without fear. "I warned you they'd adapt. I told you this invasion would fail. Then you fix it." Ven roared. "Lead the next ground assault. Show these creatures what real war looks like." Kalen's silence was his answer. He was done being complicit in the Empire's arrogance. That night, Kalen made his choice. He slipped into the Valus Prime's restricted comms chamber, bypassing encryption with the ease of an old soldier who knew every system flaw. The channel connected to Reyes. Her image appeared bloody but unbroken. "You again," she said, narrowing her eyes. Kalen's voice was low and steady. "You can end this. Tomorrow, target their flagship, this ship. I'll make sure its shields are down." Reyes studied him, suspicion flickering across her face. "Why?" "Because my people have forgotten what war means. Maybe you'll remind them." After a long pause, Reyes nodded. "Then we'll make it count." The attack began before dawn. Human forces, aided by stolen Imperial tech, launched a coordinated strike. Drones swarmed the Valus Prime, drawing fire away from incoming missiles. Hackers on the ground jammed the fleet's automated turrets. Kalen walked onto command deck as chaos erupted. "Shields are failing," an officer cried. "Impossible. Raise them." Ven bellowed. "They're overridden. Internal codes compromised." Ven turned to Kalen, realization dawning. "You..." Kalen didn't wait for the accusation. He grabbed Ven by the collar and slammed him into the bulkhead. "This war ends today." Explosions rippled across the Valus Prime's hull as human missiles tore into its shield arrays. For the first time, the Empire's flagship was vulnerable. From the ground, Reyes' forces launched their final salvo. A captured Imperial dropship, loaded with explosives, ascended into orbit on a one-way course. "Target locked." Reyes whispered into her comm, "Send them home." The dropship slammed into the Valus Prime's midsection. The blast shook the ship, alarms screaming through the corridors. Kalen dragged Ven to the command console. "Order the retreat," he demanded. Ven spat blood, defiance burning in his eyes. "Never." Kalen's hand tightened on his weapon. "Then I'll do it myself." Minutes later, the remaining fleet vessels received the recall command. The flagship limped away from orbit, smoke trailing from its shattered hull. Below, the humans cheered as the Imperial ships broke formation and fled. Kalen stood in the observation bay, watching Earth's surface recede. He wasn't smiling. He knew this wasn't the end, only the turning point. Saritz approached, her voice hushed. "You made enemies, Dravik." He glanced at her, weary but resolute. "Better enemies than fools who can't see the truth." The Valus Prime limped through the void like a dying beast. Its hull bore blackened scars where human explosives had torn through the once impenetrable armor. Sparks hissed from shattered conduits. Every corridor smelled of smoke and blood. Kalen Dravik walked through the wreckage with a heavy heart. He'd chosen this path, and now there was no turning back. High Marshal Xyrix, Ven, hadn't forgiven him. The command deck was locked down, guarded by soldiers who now looked at Kalen as both a traitor and a ghost. He approached slowly, his weapon holstered, but his posture radiating purpose. Sarex trailed behind him, silent and alert. "He's barricaded himself in," Sarex whispered. "Word is spreading through the fleet. Some see you as the only one with sense left." Kalen nodded. "If the High Marshal survives this day, the Empire will try again. And next time, humanity will not just fight back. They'll strike first. I won't let that happen." Inside the command deck, Ven paced like a caged predator. His armor was battered, but his pride was unbroken. The door hissed open, and Kalen stepped in. "Dravik," Ven growled, "you've doomed us. Do you think this retreat won't stain the Empire forever? You've made us weak." Kalen's voice was calm, but edged with steel. "No, I've made us see the truth. We've grown fat on easy victories. We thought technology alone made us invincible. But humans, Ven barked, interrupting with a laugh that was anything but amused. "They are dirt dwellers with crude weapons and tribal squabbles. They should have fallen in days. Instead, you handed them our codes, our tactics. You betrayed us for vermin." Kalen's hand twitched toward a sidearm. "I gave them nothing they wouldn't have taken anyway. They adapt faster than any species I've seen. Every day you fight them, they become something stronger. They are not vermin. They're the storm that will sweep this galaxy clean if we keep provoking them." Sarex stepped forward. "Kalen's right. We've already lost more ships to them than we did in entire campaigns against the Dreth or the Kari swarms. They're not winning because of their weapons. They're winning because they refuse to break." Ven sneered. "Then we burn them all. If Earth becomes ash, the galaxy will remember that no one defies the Empire." Kalen's eyes hardened. "That's your answer to everything. Fire and fear. It won't work this time. Destroying Earth will unite them beyond anything you can imagine. It will burst something you cannot control." The tension snapped. Ven drew his blade, a ceremonial weapon, curved and glowing with embedded plasma channels, and lunged. Kalen moved faster than he had in years, sidestepping and drawing a sidearm in one fluid motion. The shot cracked through the air, grazing Ven's shoulder but not slowing him. The command deck erupted into chaos. Guards hesitated, tore between loyalty and fear. Sarex shouted, "Stand down," but Ven roared over her voice, swinging his blade with deadly precision. Kalen blocked with his forearm armor, the heat from the blade searing into his skin. "You think you can lead better than me?" Ven snarled, striking again. "You think you understand war? I built this empire on blood." Kalen shoved him back, breathing hard. "You built it on arrogance, and arrogance always falls." With a sharp twist, Kalen disarmed him, the plasma blade clattering to the deck. In one swift motion, he leveled his sidearm and fired. The shot struck Ven square in the chest. The High Marshal collapsed, a look of disbelief frozen on his face. The silence that followed was suffocating. Kalen lowered his weapon, his breath ragged. Sarex's voice broke the stillness. "What now?" Kalen turned to the stunned crew. "Now we survive. This war is over. We leave Earth alone or we all die trying to conquer it." There was no argument. One by one, the officers lowered their weapons. Kalen's next move was bold enough to border on madness. He opened a direct channel to Earth. The holographic image of Major Elena Reyes flickered into view. She looked exhausted but victorious, her face streaked with soot and blood. "You again," she said, voice flat but curious. "I was expecting you to come gloating. Or to surrender." Kalen shook his head. "Neither. Ven is dead. I've taken command of the fleet." Reyes blinked. "That's a hell of a coup." "The Empire underestimated you," Kalen said, his voice steady. "I won't make the same mistake. I'm calling off the invasion. No more strikes. No more blood." Reyes leaned forward, her expression unreadable. "And you expect me to believe that?" Kalen's eyes held hers. "Believe it or don't. But I've seen enough of your kind to know this. If we push you further, you won't just defend your world. You'll come for ours. And you'll win." For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Reyes nodded. "Good. Because if you break that promise, we'll finish what we started." When the transmission ended, Kalen felt the weight of his decision settle like a cloak over his shoulders. Sarex approached him quietly. "You know the council will brand you a traitor for this," she said. Kalen stared at the stars beyond the viewport. "Let them. The Empire needs to fear something again. Maybe then they'll remember what it means to fight for more than pride." 2 days later, the fleet jumped out of the Sol system, leaving her scarred but unconquered. In the quiet that followed, Kalen stood on the deck alone, watching the stars stretch into infinity. Sarex joined him. "What will you do now?" He didn't answer at first. His mind was still on Earth, on Reyes, on the fire in humanity's eyes. "I'll stay out here," he said finally. "Watch them. Warn them if I can, because this isn't over. They'll rise, and when they do, the galaxy will need to be ready." Sarex tilted her head. "You think they'll come for us?" Kalen allowed himself a faint, grim smile. "Not yet, but someday they'll leave that blue planet behind. And when they do, they won't ask for permission." In the distance, Earth's sun glimmered like a challenge, warm and unyielding. Kalen turned from it, his path clear but uncertain. For the first time in decades, he felt something he hadn't known in years. Hope, tempered by fear. "Humans," he murmured, almost to himself. "The wild card we never saw coming."